Let's continue on in Photoshop and look at adjusting a scan and inverting a floor plan. So what I have here is a illustration that I'm working on. This is my parents' dog Maggie. She's very cute and a sweetheart. What you can see in my layers palette is that I have my actual scan, which is my sketch layer, and underneath that what I have is just a white color fill so that we have a white to base off of as we drop out the paper tone in the sketch layer. I'm going to go back to my sketch layer active in my layers palette there. First thing I'm going to do is go to image size. When you scan sketches, process work, things of that nature, drawings, etc., make sure that you scan them at least at 600 dpi in color and save them as a TIFF. That will give you the most information to work with later. For print, as we know, I only need this to be a resolution of 300 pixels per inch, so I am going to resize to that resolution. I do want to make sure that resample is unchecked. Again, I don't want Photoshop to eliminate or reinterpret or make up information that's not there. I'm going to click into my resolution, change this from 6 to 300, and you can see the image is now twice as big as it was. So bonus for us. Again, moving forward, the rule is placing in documents or other programs, always smaller, never bigger. So this gives us a lot to work with. And with drawings, when you shrink down the size, what it does is tighten up all the information and make the drawing really crisp and really pop. So I'm going to hit OK from there. I'm going to open up my adjustments palette, and we're just simply going to put a levels adjustment on this. Again, here in the levels palette, you can see the histogram. On the right, we have the low key or black. I'm going to pull that in just past where the value starts to move above 0. And then on the high key on the right hand side, or the white, this is going to drop out our paper tone as we drag to the left. Generally, the spot where all of the very high values off the scale take the first big drop or cliff dive is about where you want to put that slider. And you can see over here on my image now, you really cannot see where the edges of the paper were. So if I go back to my layers palette, flip off the visibility on the adjustment, you can see how well that dropped out the paper. Sometimes when you make this adjustment and drop this paper out, it will lighten up your line work just a bit. This is a graphite drawing. They are especially prone to losing small amounts of information with adjustments of this nature. If you know that you're creating something that you're going to want to scan and use later, my suggestion is to use very bright white paper and a drawing implement that will give you a rich black line. Something such as an ink pen or microns work really well. So what I'm going to do to bring back my line work is drag this sketch layer down into the new layer icon at the bottom of the layers palette here. What that's going to do is create a copy of that layer. And then here in the layer blending mode drop down box, if I change this layer to multiply, what multiply does is drop out the whites and darken up the darks. So you can see it brought back all my line work, but it also brought back some of my paper tone here from the original scan. So now if I go back up to my levels adjustment layer and I double click on that levels thumbnail, I can readjust the high key and drop that paper tone and that little bit of burn from that multiply back out of my drawing. And that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do to save this to move forward is right click here in my layers palette. I'm going to flatten my image. Then I'm going to go to File, Save As, give it a name, give it a reasonable place to save, change the file type to JPEG. for placement into another program such as InDesign. That is going to give you plenty of information. And from there I'm going to hit save. I'm going to leave this on maximum quality, largest file, and I'm going to hit OK. Alright, let's take a look at a floor plan. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and go to my image. I have this floor plan here. Thank you, Arden, for letting me use this plan. So you'll see what that does, and this is pretty much how any PDF kicked out of CAD is going to look as far as floor plans, elevations, etc. It's going to give you all your line work and a transparent background. If you see a PDF import dialog box before this comes up, just make sure that you are in RGB or CMYK color space. Once in a while it will try to kick everything on to grayscale, and grayscale as a color mode in Photoshop is very hard to work with. So I can see over here I just have one layer with the line work. Before we can invert this or make it a black background with gray and white line work, we need to actually have a white background behind it. In the bottom of the layers palette in the middle is what we affectionately call the cookie in Photoshop. It's the half-filled circle. If I click on that, right here at the top is solid color. What that's going to do is drop a solid color fill layer into my document. I do want white, which is FFF in hex code, or all zeros in CMYK, or all 255s in RGB. I'm going to hit OK. That's going to create my color fill layer. It is by default dropped on top of the line work of my floor plan, so I can just click to the right of the name. If you click on the name, Photoshop will think you want to change the name. I really don't care about the names in this file, just because there isn't going to be a whole lot there. So I can click and drag this down underneath my line work layer, and now we can get kind of a good look at what's going on. I'm going to activate my top layer so that I can go back to my adjustments palette. In the bottom row, all the way on the left, is invert. I'm going to click on that, go back to my layers palette, and you can see that turns the background to white, black, makes my line work white, and all my fills pretty much stayed that kind of same gray tone. Alright, so looking in here, some of this line work is pretty thin and starting to disappear again. Short of going back into CAD and upping the weight of those lines and re-exporting the PDF, you can cheat it a little bit here in Photoshop. What I'm going to do is click and drag on this layer 0, which is my plan, drag it into the new layer icon, which is going to create a copy. And again, I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply, and you can see that really brightened everything up quite a bit. I'm going to drag that copy again down into the new layer icon to create another copy. It'll be set to the same blending mode, multiply, and you'll see this is brightening up quite a bit, but when we flatten it, it's going to take that really, really bright edge off. So I want to do this one more time. I'm going to have my copy 2 layer selected. I'm going to hold shift to select multiple layers, grab my copy 0, drag both of those down into the new layer icon to create 2 more copies. And don't be alarmed that this is starting to look a little blown out, because when we right click and flatten image, it's going to tone down just a bit. If that's one bridge too far for you with these fill lines in the walls, just do less copies of those adjustment layers. So I can now save this either as the original PDF, or I can do File, Save As, and change this to a JPEG. you're going to have pretty much the same image quality when you place for print regardless of that format.